This is the War Room Roundtable podcast, the show that takes you around the world to share interviews with some of the most successful and relevant businessmen and women on the planet. Hear their stories and get the most important business lessons they've learned on the road to success, and get exclusive advice on how to implement their successes into your life and business. The War Room Roundtable is brought to you by your hosts, Jason Miller, CEO of Strategic Advisor Board, and Phillip Lanos, CEO of Own the Rhythm, and former podcast host for Entrepreneur and Inc. magazine. Welcome to the War Room. Judith, how you doing today?
I am very good, thank you, and delighted to be with you two.
Yeah, are you kidding me? We had a great chance to speak with Jim the last time around, and now we've got you here. So we're gonna start off the same way, the way we ask everybody who stops by the show. Do you yourself come from a family of entrepreneurs?
Do I come from a family of entrepreneurs? Absolutely not. Okay. My mother did not work, made it through high school, that was it, and my dad had to drop out of high school in the 11th grade. His mother was a widow and had 5 kids, and he felt the need to go to work and help support the family, never went back to school, and sold cars, which he was good at, but never really loved it. And the one time when he tried to be an entrepreneur and bought a used car lot, it failed radically because he just didn't have the juice to be an entrepreneur. He didn't know how to do it.
Wow. Okay. And so growing up, watching this happen, did this influence your decision to be an entrepreneur yourself later in life, or to do the things that you did?
Yes, absolutely. I knew one thing was that I didn't identify with my mother, which was a stay-at-home mom. I identified with my dad, who at least went to work and made money. And I had the good fortune of, at the age of 12, looking about 18 and winning a beauty contest and started modeling. And I lived in Los Angeles then, and that kept going in terms of doing television commercials and acting in television shows and making great money back when other kids my age were babysitting for, my guess is back then it was probably 50 cents an hour. And every year of high school, I made at least $10,000. And I'm not young, we're looking some years back. So I knew that I always wanted to make good money.
Wow. I mean, yeah, you definitely had the impetus for it, having watched what you were watching happen. And I mean, in my notes here, I mean, I see you were part of the original Star Trek, Ozzie and Harriet, I Dream of Jeannie. Are you kidding me? Wild Wild West. That's a whole life in itself, right? And is this sort of where you were picking up all the like the modeling and everything you were talking about at that same time?
Right, exactly. At the same time, I was doing fashion shows and modeling for department stores, doing a lot of photographic modeling. Well, after college, I went to UCLA to meet a husband. I didn't care about, education. I wanted to meet a husband. I didn't. But in my senior year, Dove soap, for some reason, plucked me out of Los Angeles and sent me back to New York to do a Dove soap commercial because I had a Midwest accent, is what they told me. And I discovered New York City, which was remarkable and fantastic. I came back to LA, managed to graduate, told a couple of friends, we have to move. We have to go back to New York. And so then I spent a year and a half in New York modeling, mostly doing television commercials, some acting. But in terms of the fear of being fabulous, which is one of the terms that Jim and I use a lot in our coaching, I couldn't let myself keep being successful. What I kept hearing was, I have to go back to Los Angeles and get married. I have to get married. I have to get married. Why? Because all my mother and father knew to say to me was, Well, when you're married and you have grandchildren for us. So that was what was in my unconscious and conscious mind was I have to get married. Now, I didn't meet Jim for 22 more years.
Oh, wow.
So it took me a while to get married, but it plucked me out of the modeling and acting. And I started looking around for, well, what else am I going to do now that I'm back in Los Angeles and not married? And that's when I went back to school and got my PhD in psychology and became a clinical psychologist.
Yeah, this is deep. Okay. As somebody who was also from Los Angeles, had moved to New York, fell in love with the city, and then thought to themselves, as I was getting success and like growing in my career, I said, yeah, maybe I'll go back to LA. If I can do it here, I can do it there, only to end up like in this weird place where now I have to figure out, okay, well, and then completely turning around and doing none of those things and now doing something completely different. It really is mind-boggling how interesting that is, that there's that parallel with your story. And if I remember correctly, if people never leave their hometown, right, they can never leave behind who their family sees them as, and the list goes on, right? So you go into psychology, and then you turn this, according to my notes here, into like a corporate consulting career.
Exactly. Right. At first, I'm doing private practice. And then I meet Jim on a blind date. So blind dates, everybody who's single, don't poo-poo blind dates. They can pay off. And we start then working together, doing workshops and consulting we get invited to do a variety of corporate consultations. And that leads to doing executive coaching. And LinkedIn was one of our primary clients, still a client. And we were on retainer for 4 years, 4 days a week, training people in management skills, speaking skills, and doing lots of coaching. And so that's what we still do today, is a lot of corporate coaching with leaders, often around the fear of being fabulous, and other issues as well.
Yeah, I really think it's interesting because a lot of people, especially in the remote world, don't seem to understand how important it is to have a good tool set for communication, especially in a remote world. Like not only as a leader, but also as an employee, right? If you plan to move forward, what has your experience been like working with people on that level?
A great example, Phillip, is yesterday with a client. She was prepping for a presentation, and we've just started working with her. And every sentence, she came down to the end of the sentence and went down. And we stopped her immediately and said, no, you can't do that. You must speak with more confidence and make sure the ends of sentences don't get dropped. This was so challenging. And this is somebody who's not 15. I mean, this is an adult who has to learn different presentation skills. Same thing with some people, don't make eye contact. They think because they're on Zoom, it's okay to be reading their notes over here or looking at their other monitor.
Oh, do I know what you're talking about?
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Sometimes
Jason runs many businesses.
God, you just want to reach through the screen and just choke somebody sometimes. Like, look at me here. Pay attention to me. Stop texting.
Right. Isn't that the truth?
Yeah. No, it's a real, that's the real pandemic.
Yeah.
Right? Yes.
People have an
having to learn.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I think it's powerful. And like I was saying, Jason himself runs multiple businesses, one of them being a staffing agency. I can only imagine the headache there.
Sometimes.
Yeah, man. But I really enjoy where this is going so far. And before I push it any further, because I know we're building up to some really interesting things now, I want to make sure I give the floor to Jason so he just reflects on some of the things you've shared so far, because that's a fascinating story.
What I love about the whole thing right? I mean, the whole story is very fascinating because, it's this like dream world then clashes with, a different reality later in life, and then a complete career change. It's like, right. And, it's just, it shows the human dynamic though. And that's what I love about people. I always say we're human beings, not human doings, right? So we're here to be, not to always just do things, right? So, it's like my grandfather, he passed away. He was 91, I think. And he did such wonderful things throughout his whole life. And he farmed his whole life, but he was kind of like the John Wayne. It's what he reminded me of. He reminded me of John Wayne because he was always doing these other things in the winter when you couldn't farm, right? And then during, spring and summer, he would farm, and then he would do something else. And so it just goes to show how adaptable we really are as human beings, right? And, yours is like that, your beginnings of your story are like those things that like, they're almost mystical in a lot of ways, right? And that's really something neat to be able to connect with people, is those kind of things. But then it's not like this, I don't even know what the right word to use is, but it's not like this, that's what defined you, right? Because you went on to do so many other things that probably overshadowed all those things by a million times, right? And then we go through these transitions in life, and that's how it is, right? No different than I spent 23 years in the military. Doesn't define me now. It's like a life gone past, right? It happened. It was great. I don't regret doing it. But then I scaled up my life to something else, right?
And you learned a lot about yourself during those years that allowed you to scale your life up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's just a beautiful story you have. And, we all have that same Trace story. It's just a different narrative.
Well, and some people don't let themselves scale up, and that's what Jim and I are after always in working with people. And what we had to do for ourselves is overcome the fear of being more fabulous. We call it overcoming the fear of being fabulous, meaning letting yourself be all that you can be instead of living with a lot of fear and anxiety and whatever people may be carrying around from their childhood of feeling like, no, I just have to be obedient. I just have to do what my boss tells me to do, or I need to stay put to make sure that I have income that I can count on, instead of, well, what would you really love to do? What would express all that you are instead of just a little bit?
Yeah. I love that saying. I had to write it down. Overcoming the fear of fabulous. I love that. I had to write that down because that is such a,
that'll be the title for the episode.
That'll be the title for the episode. For
sure. Good.
That's the program that you run. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Well, and no surprise, Jim and I created a program called Overcoming the Fear of Being Fabulous.com/workshop.
There you go.
To help people, and people give us great reviews because it's a workshop, an internal workshop that lets people really question, what are their values? Why are they staying loyal to old beliefs instead of being able to open up to new ideas? And as I say, Jim and I have had to work on a lot of our own beliefs coming from, well, neither one of our fathers graduated from high school. Neither one of our mothers worked. So we didn't grow up in families where there was role models for expanding who you are and who you can be in the world.
It takes courage to be able to grow beyond your own personal image, your own self-image, right? And
Right.
I think it's fascinating that you brought up the point about human beings are the only creatures that we know of that can wake up and decide, I'm only going to be 10% myself today. Right? And a dog's going to be 100% dog, a cat 100% cat. You can fill in the blank with an animal, but a human being has the audacity and the privilege to be able to say, I'm just not going to, today is not my day. Like they just decide today is not the day.
Well, and sometimes it's not really a decision as much as it is an unconscious piece of their history that when they, for instance, very often when we're working with leaders that were put down in their childhood, told to mind their manners, to, who do you think you are? We're not interested in hearing from you. And sometimes it's cultural. We have to play ourselves down. We have to be modest.
Right.
Then when these people end up in corporate jobs, they tell us they're going to run a meeting and they immediately are anxious. Everybody at the meeting likes them. They like their boss. The boss thinks they're terrific, but they still are arriving with their 5-year-old anxiety about, will I do something bad? Will dad or mom be mad at me? And they don't understand why they're anxious because they haven't done the work of letting that stuff come to the surface and realizing, oh, I do have to leave home.
I remember this conversation. Yep. Some people never leave home and they're not better because of it.
Exactly. They're stuck.
Yeah. It's such a valid conversation, especially in the workplace today where things are remote now. There's less and less opportunity for you to develop personally as an individual, because now you can turn on this persona, jump onto your Zoom calls, do what you got to do, and then turn it off and go back to whatever you were, and just hunch up and just not even. And I feel like it's getting in the way of the personal development of a lot of younger people. I had the privilege of being born just at the cusp of a time when kids were still told to go play outside, where we still drank from a water hose, and passed it on. And there was always the one kid who drank for too long, dirt clods at each other and put a metal rod on the train tracks to make it seem like the train, like just messing around being kids, and now kids are all growing up on their tablets 24/7, from here to the tablet that's for school to the video game that's and there's just this whole development, and these are going to be the people, the future workforce. There's already memes and jokes about them on social media for job interviews where they use language like, so totally not cap, I don't have any experience, but and they just, and
yes.
And this is real language that is just now ubiquitous for this generation. And again, look, I'm sure people were doing the same thing when it came. We had just had this conversation in the previous interview. People were having the same kinds of conversations when the millennials were entering the workforce. These kids are lazy and So I understand that it's going to always, that's just history repeating itself, right? And what the work that you're doing, it's building the groundwork as you continue to do this for as long as you can, right? Because that's what we're in the game for the long run, right? You're going to come across people whose problems, they may not even stem from personal traumas at this point. It may just be they have no practice, right? And that's like the worst one of all, because they're not even willing to try. And why bother? I could just text someone.
Well, there you go. Well, and they don't know to try. An example is that Jim and I wrote a book when Whitney Houston died, when she was 48 years old. And we weren't big fans of Whitney Houston, but 48 years old. And I said, Jim, if we do the research, I know we're going to be able to see that she died from the fear of being fabulous, not from drugs, not from alcohol. No. So we wrote a book called What Really Killed Whitney Houston. Sure enough, She never left home.
Wow.
So a couple of examples, she is nominated for her first Grammy. And there's a video, I hope it's still up, but back then anyway, there was a video where they interviewed mom and dad who were both backstage, how it was that their little girl was going to win her first Grammy. And dad says, oh, you know, she'll be coming running back. She won't stay out there much. She's going to come back to us. Mom says, oh, my little girl, I still remember when she was in my arms and she was my little girl. Neither one of them says, I'm so proud of this grown up. Nope. So when you see her in videos and she wins an award, all of them show her running up on stage, taking the award. Yes, she has the award. And then she says, and I want to thank God, and I want to thank Jesus Christ, and I want to thank Mommy and Daddy, and runs off. She can't hold on to, and I want to thank my audience. I want to thank people all around the world who love me. I take in their love. No, it doesn't exist for her. So also she goes on her first European tour. Again, she's in her early 20s. She cries every day, according to her PR friend who was on the tour with her. She cries every day because she's lonely. Now she has her own band that she knows. Her PR gal is somebody she knows. Who is she lonely for? Who does she have dinner with the very first night she's back in New York? Mom and Dad.
Oh, wow.
She's never left home. Who did she talk to just before she drowned in that bathtub in the hotel when she was 48? Mom. They would not let go of her, and she couldn't leave them. So it's a vivid and painful. I mean, this woman was gorgeous and had, a voice of a queen and could not leave home.
Yeah. Wow. I think the first time I ever came across the concept, and I don't know where the timeline is on the work, but I think it was with Eric Byrne, the psychologist, wrote this book called Games People Play, right? And
right.
The different phenomenons that people can interact on. And that permanent parent-child to parent interaction was clearly a handicap because they never addressed the adult in her, right? And it's funny, I grew up without parents and mostly without family and always kind of passed around. And to this very day, I can feel the effects of how that impacts the decisions I make, the length of stride of success that I allow myself, right? Like, as I hear you say this about Whitney, and I just think to myself, like, in what ways am I self-sabotaging? I moved to New York. Sure enough, the only reason I moved back to LA was because I thought it was going to be more affordable. I felt like I have family waiting for me or anything like that. Turns out the prices, but between the time I moved to New York and came back, it met up, and I was like, I'm not about to just move back after just moving back. So I'm kind of here until I decide where I'm going to go next. But I know for a fact, and I think anyone listening needs to take a hard look at what they're doing. And they can obviously look up the workshop that you've developed to go further into this. But it does start with a question, right? What part of me still holding on to home, whatever that is? And what part of me still is complaining, potentially in my case, right, that maybe there is no home? And how is that impacting the decisions I make, right? Because it can just be inverted. It's like inferiority complex and superiority complex. It's the same thing. It's a complex.
Well, and maybe for you, you might even be able to flip it over and see that, wow, actually, I'm pretty free if I would just own the fact that I don't really have roots that are holding me back. What could I do more because I am free?
Yeah. I see that all the time.
Oh, good.
I never do anything about it, but I see other people complain, oh, my parents this, or oh, my family that. And I'm like, wow, the only problems I seemingly have in my life are financial problems. And I'm trying to figure out why that is the case. And it's almost like I'm making that a problem because that's the only problem I can have. Like I think about it sometimes.
Why do you need a problem?
I know. I know. I'm the luckiest guy in the world. I have zero problems really if I look at it, right? All the, like losing my dad really early on due to ALS and this and like
Ooh.
legitimately like I have had no all my problems happened early in life. And now as an adult, I'm like creating problems to just have them. It feels like, I mean, this is like going deep or what have you, but I'm also not ashamed of it because I feel like there's somebody listening right now, potentially, who has no idea why they're in the cycle that they're in. They maybe don't even have access to brilliant minds like yourself, like Jason and I are lucky to sit here with and have these conversations. And whatever next level you're trying to reach, it could just be a simple, taking a hard look at yourself and asking the question, like, what are you not willing to address? What are you not willing to let go? Right. And I think that's the power of this conversation that we're having today. It started last time when we were talking to Jim, and we're bringing it right back and bringing it full force with this one because it's making me think. And I like to think out loud when these things are happening because I want people to be involved in the thought process because it's that experience that sort of creates that, I guess it's epistemology, like the whole, you ask yourself questions and philosophically, eventually you'll arrive at some answers that were within you the whole time, right? I'm hoping to get sort of that out in the open so that people are more open to having that dialogue with themselves, which is probably the most important dialogue someone can have.
Right. Absolutely. And I hope that you will take away from this. How does it serve you? And obviously we don't know you. I don't know you well enough to have any clue, but how does it serve you to have financial problems? Are you allowed to be wealthy? Who would you be if you were wealthy? Jason, do I have any help?
Oh Lord.
Oh yeah. I mean, you're hitting it for sure. It's trust me and Phillip have spent hours on the phone around some of these conversations. And
it's not lack of ability, that's for sure.
It's definitely not that. And a lot of times I think there's this thing called imposter syndrome, right?
Sure.
I think a lot of people, I'm not saying you do, Phillip. I just think
I'm open to
a lot of people, right? They have these wonderful skills and they can do them and they can do them better than probably 98% of the other people on the market. But there's just that something that holds them back because they're not proven. Maybe they don't have an education around it. There's something there that literally holds them back from what's really their zone of genius. Because I always tell people this: if you tell me you're good at any more than about 4 things, you're full of crap. Because you really can't be any. You can only have about 4, maybe at the very most 5 superpowers, right? Things that you are extremely good at, right? I can play pool. That doesn't mean I'm good at it. It's not a superpower, right? So there's things that we are like really, really, really good at that we can share that kind of value in the marketplace that can be monetized, right? But we have to turn around and look in the mirror and go, the old school Saturday Night Live skit. I'm good enough. I'm smart enough. And by God, people like me. Right. But there's a lot of power in that self-reflection. Right. But you gotta be in love with yourself before somebody else can be in love with you.
Well, and the imposter syndrome really is so epidemic. You're absolutely right.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that we would say to a lot of people is, how well do you receive a compliment? Just a basic exercise to take a look at yourself. How well do you receive praise? How well do you receive a compliment? Whether it's from a friend, your boss, your mate, anybody. Most people will say something like, "Oh, I just shine it on. No big deal. I don't want to get a big head." They've got all kinds of reasons for why they don't take in the outside evidence that they are excellent at something.
Yeah.
Even if it's walking down the street and somebody says, wow, that's a fantastic shirt. You bought the shirt, you picked out the shirt, or somebody gave you the shirt. Why not own, thank you, I appreciate that. So in terms of starting to work with the imposter syndrome, one of the things that we help people really understand is that if they can't receive praise, they can't receive compliments fully and own it, that's a place to start working.
Yeah. No, it's true. Jason has been here a number of times where someone said, wow, Phillip, and when it first started, I was really caught off guard because people said it to me, but not as much as when we started making as many episodes as we had on the show. But wow, Phillip, you're really great at this interview thing or what have you. And at first I was like, oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Like, oh, let's not make this about me, which is weird. Right. Because all I had to do was say, oh, thank you very much. Yeah, no, I've been working hard on this for a long time now. Right. But no, and it's only fairly recently that I started accepting that. And in accepting that, obviously, I started behaving differently too, in terms of like what I was willing to allow myself to do and accomplish. So there's a lot of validity to what's being said here. And I know that you know that, but I want to be able to echo that and give a perspective for someone who may be still sitting on the edge going, oh, well, I mean, what's the big deal being humble with a compliment? There's a lot going on in that humility that you think is humility when it's not. It's like covert hostility towards yourself,
Right? But you're really playing yourself down when you can't. And Phillip, you are terrific. You and Jason are really fun. When Jim, my husband, Jim Snikowski, was on the podcast with you and I was listening in, I thought, oh, these two are so fun. I want to be on. Me too.
I'm so glad we got you on too, because what we're talking about is like the inside game of what it takes to succeed in life, or as you call it, how to be okay with being fabulous, right? Like overcoming that fear and like really accepting like, yeah, I am awesome. And there's nothing wrong with that because everybody can be awesome. But you got to start with you. You're not going to be able to ride the coattails of somebody else being awesome. You got to light your own awesome up. And it's true. I can see why Jason was a big fan of that when he heard you drop that, because it's true. And I hope that this episode really drives that point home. And when I saw that that's where the conversation was going, I said to myself, if the opportunity presents itself, I want to be able to allow whatever I might be trying to overcome, be a part of that process so that people can see it laid out like a frog back in science class when you got to whatever. Some people did it, some people didn't, but you get to dissect this and really take a hard look, because sometimes it's easier. In fact, that's how I use humor. I always use self-deprecating humor to help other people feel like, okay, it can't get any worse than that. So now I can be myself, right? Because I don't have a problem with that because I know who I am. It's never like insulting to me. I'll do something silly to help disarm people because I'm like, okay, nobody's special here, especially not me. Can we get over that now? And, but do you see how that can be a double-edged sword? I know that.
So you just heard it yourself. I'm nothing special. And to make other people more comfortable.
I really walked into this, didn't I? Yeah. Don't make me. I'm going to get the baseball bat out so we can beat it into your head.
Oh, wow. I really just said that out loud.
The important thing, Phillip, is you heard it. You caught yourself. You could hear yourself.
I go out of my way to make other people comfortable.
And other people who clearly aren't probably as skilled, handsome, smart as you are. And so your impulse is to make them feel better by putting yourself down instead of, oh, maybe I don't belong here. Maybe these are not my people.
That sums up like the last 25 years of my 33 years of life. I have legitimately been in rooms for far too long with people that have been a part of my life for far too long, and it served me for nothing other than just heartache. That's true.
Wow.
That's definitely true. All because I thought, well, I know what it's like to be abandoned. I know what it's like to have people say you don't belong here. So I'll just be everybody's home. But as you can't be loved by everybody, and you can't be responsible for other people's happiness. And I knew that always early on, but of course I never let go of that. And so, yeah, I can see how in over the long term, how like those qualities can help people feel comfortable, sure, but they can also get in the way of your own success, as it clearly, I mean, I can't think of, I don't know how many people I've met in my life who are all, I mean, I'm okay. I'm not like, I live next to the beach. I'm doing okay, but like I could be doing a lot better. And it has a lot to do with the fact that it's like, as I'm hearing myself talk and having this conversation with you and my overcoming my fear of being fabulous, that I think it has a lot to do with like, I don't want to let myself be too awesome for the sake of anybody who may not be. And that could be pretty much anyone that I may still be related to, or even just myself for whatever reason. And because I mean, if I really wanted to, I probably could be pretty awesome.
Yes, you could. Yes, you could. And there's a little video that Jim and I created a bit ago called You Are a Miracle, available at youareamiracle.net. It's free. Please go watch it, Phillip. You are a miracle. You are a one-of-a-kind miracle. Youareamiracle.net. Please own who you are, sir. You are fantastic.
This is crazy conversation. I definitely didn't expect.
This one just zinged off in a whole new direction.
Yeah, but it's okay. I'm here for it. I think that's how it's done. So for me, I'm totally stoked. This conversation has been absolutely inspiring. So youareamiracle.net, you said?
Youareamiracle.net.
And then is there anywhere else you want people to go visit by any chance?
If they're interested in a book, it's What Really Killed Whitney Houston. And that's available on Amazon, of course, in audio, Kindle, or paperback. And then for people who really want to dig into this stuff, the workshop is Overcoming the Fear of Being Fabulous.com/workshop. And it's available in audio or CDs. And people love it because it takes you through all kinds of, it's like a personal workshop. It takes you through all kinds of experiences. We're not just talking at you.
Okay, right on. So before we go to the grand finale, and you know what? I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. I've been putting this off for a while. We have a close community of people that we sort of, they support the show to make it possible. And we have an open slot here where I could easily insert what I do to help tell people, because I never do this.
Perfect timing.
Yeah. So I'm going to put my money where my mouth is and tell people, I started this a long time ago. It's called Own the Rhythm. And it happened when I was at a marketing agency. And just as I was leaving, the CEO asked me for advice on how to present themselves because of all my years as an entertainer prior to going into digital marketing. And I told them something along those lines: you really got to own your rhythm when you're up there on stage. Little did I know I was coaching him for public speaking at the time. I didn't know that. Right. And over time, I kept helping him with his own personal brand and this and that. And it started bleeding into the things I was doing for everybody else, because presentation is something that I'm very meticulous about. And especially because I'm so cognizant, as we now know from this story, right, of how others may feel around you or because of you being around. Right. And so what I did was I launched this company called Own the Rhythm. And essentially, if you've ever gone to someone's website and read all the copy, we do and you're like, okay, so what do you do? Because it just sounded like a bunch of like filling words. I still don't know what you do. I just happen to know you're charging for it. I can help people actually narrow down what it is they're doing, because it's the same skill I use when I'm interviewing someone to help reiterate what they just said in a way that's more digestible for people. Because if there's anything we know, I'm the kind of person that goes, oh, I know how to make it so that people can actually eat it bit by bit at a time instead of shoving it down someone's throat, right? So I can take massive amounts of information because I'm a lot, and I found a way to be able to contribute that to people in bits and pieces. So I can do the same for anybody, and I have done, from all the people that I've interviewed. Many a CEO I've helped. Whether or not they stayed on for the long term is a different story, because people have a way of thinking that some things are more important than others and then wanting to come back to me when I'm already working with somebody else. But the truth is, I can help you do that. So if you're interested in getting your message down right and making it punchy, smooth, you jump in an elevator, you tell people this is what you do, and then you go, I can help you do that. So hit me up. You can go to PhillipLanos.com. Feels really weird to say that because I never tell people.
How do you spell it? Spell
it. PhillipLanos.
Oh, wait, let's slow down. What's the last name?
LANOS.com. And go ahead and send me a note. There's a contact form there, and let's help get you up to speed. Yeah. So with that said, oh my God,
didn't that feel liberating?
It's crazy how hard it is for me to do that, but I will champion anybody else for anything else. It's hilarious. I can't believe it's like pulling teeth with me. That's crazy. I can't believe it.
And everybody, please notice how difficult it was for Phillip to slow down and give you the correct spelling of his name.
And I know better. You know how many times I've told people, hey, speaking fast is like apologizing for speaking at all. I could coach people all day. And then I'm sitting here trying to deliver my own thing. And I'm like, nobody needs to worry about me. My entire life is me telling people, don't worry about me, even though I could probably use a worry or two. That's crazy, man. So yeah, it's been an awesome conversation and clearly revealing for me.
Good.
I am grateful. I'm going to go to check out youareamiracle.net.
youareamiracle.net.
Yeah. And then I'll have to take a look at what really killed Whitney Houston as well. It's on Amazon, right? That's going to be awesome. But with that said, if you could have invited anybody dead or alive to this conversation today, who would you have loved to have had here, and why, Judith?
Wow, what an interesting question. I think nobody comes to mind, but what comes to mind are all of the slaves who made it out of the South and got themselves out of slavery by running away, by jumping on railroad cars and hiding and getting themselves up into the North. I would love to have talked with some of those people about how they found the courage and the intent, and also did they value their intelligence of all the ways that they figured out how to avoid getting caught and avoid getting sent back, because certainly some of the slaves that made it up into the North were sent back. I would love to have talked with some of those people about what they felt and what they knew that motivated them and then allowed them to be so wise and smart to take care of themselves.
And completely transform the circumstances that surround
them. Yes. Transform the circumstances of their lives totally.
Yeah, I can understand why you bring that up. That's a fascinating case, and it's a real history that this country has. No different than what happened with the Holocaust, and what Viktor Frankl did with Man's Search for Meaning, and just that, like, some people crumble under pressure, and others have an impossible, unbreakable spirit, and there's something to learn from that. I mean, what a conversation. Judith, I can't thank you enough for stopping by. It is tradition around here to have Jason close us out, so I will let him do that.
A pleasure. Thank you so much. And hello, Jason, again.
Yeah, Judith, man, just a wonderful conversation. My gosh, you have so much to offer to the world. And I mean, both you and Jim both have so much to offer to the world. And, hopefully people are able to see, my senior vice president just released her book. It's called I See Your Genius. And I hope people are able to see you guys' genius that you guys are doing and the way you're helping people through all these challenges, in not just in business, but in their lives too, right? Because anything in business directly correlates and translates right over to your life itself, right?
That's right.
Because what I decide to take out of this office today upstairs, that affects everything. And so the work you guys are doing on what just seems to be the most fundamentally simplest thing of losing that voice, right? Seems so simple, right? But where is the cause and effect of that through the entire life of that person?
Right.
It's not just that one moment, right? There's so many interconnecting things that, the simplest things in life create this effect, like when you throw a rock into a pond that's just glass and you watch it just go ripple, right? That's how everything in our life is. Everything is a ripple. And, I'm glad there are people like you out there doing what you're doing. Keep doing that forever.
You bet.
Keep doing that through the vessels that you're using. And, we just appreciate you being here, sharing this with us. And this truly was a very different episode. But I'm grateful for it. I'm very grateful for it because we got to see something different today. And we got to see something that was very powerful unfold, and some realizations had trifecta, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Good. So. Well, it's been a joy and a pleasure. I knew it would be. You two are wonderful. It was just such fun to be with you. And Phillip, making yourself available the way you did was really awesome. Thank you.
Oh, wow. Are you kidding me? Thank you. Seriously. It was funny to watch myself struggle to put myself out there to help people, even though anyone who comes to me, I'm always so willing to help. But I've learned how hard it is for me to do that just through the example today, even though if I'm talking to somebody, I'll casually mention, but that's just it. There's nothing casual about the help that I can offer people. And I learned that today. So thank you.
Bravo, sir. You are so welcome. Thank you both.
Okay. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to the War Room Roundtable with your hosts, Jason Miller and Phillip Lanos. Please leave your feedback and visit strategicadvisorboard.com to get the latest and greatest business advisement on the planet. Follow us on social media for updates, and always remember, if you can dream it and believe it, then you can go achieve it. We'll see you in the next episode.